Welcome to Speedrunner Reviews. In this series I'll be analysing and reviewing games using the mindset of speedrunning. This video will look at the game from three perspectives. First, the casual experience, which is how most people will first play the game. This will look like a condensed standard review. Next we'll discuss the speedrunning experience, including all the interesting tech and how well the game holds up as a speed game. And finally we'll look at the tool-assisted speedrun, showing what the game looks like when pushed to the theoretical limit. If you already know the game and want to jump straight to the speedrun part, I've left timestamps in the description. Today we're looking at Donald Land, which is a platformer exclusively released for the Famicom, and it stars Donald McDonald, which is the Japanese version of Ronald McDonald. Yep, it's a McDonald's game. Before we get stuck into it, if you end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing to keep up to date. I'm hoping to continue making these videos and subscriptions help out the channel a lot. So this game's a McDonald's tie-in game, and the first thing you need to get used to is the fact that he is called Donald in Japan. But it's a fairly standard platformer at heart. So you can run, you can jump, and you have this ability to throw apples. Now throwing apples is really interesting because you can jump on the apples that you've thrown. If you have a gap you need to get across, jump on the apples and jump across. You might also notice that the apples did speed you up a bit. So if you want to go quickly, you want to throw your apples and jump off them. You can throw apples up or you can throw them on the ground. And that's basically how you get around in this game. You can play it like a normal platformer, just running left to right and jumping, only throwing apples when you need to, but if you want to get the most out of it, you want to get really used to throwing those apples when you can. And at the end of the level you get to a boss fight, and that's basically how all the levels go. To fight the bosses, you'll never guess, but you have to hit them with apples. So apples act sort of like landmines or grenades, and they just have a little timer on them and then they blow up. When you blow up the boss enough times, you'll finish the level. But the cool thing about this game is that you get to go shopping at McDonald's after each level. So you can buy various burger and fries power-ups, and they usually just give you like extra lives and stuff. But it's a really nice way to integrate Maccas into the game itself. Now the collision in this game is pretty janky. It's kind of hard to tell just from looking at gameplay footage, but you'll get bounced back a lot, and you'll also gain the speed of whatever enemy you jump off. So if they're moving right, you'll jump off them really fast, but if they're moving left, you'll jump off really slow. And the same goes for your apples. It can be a really tricky game because of these slippery controls, but you do get used to it eventually. The game has a variety of levels, like this one where you're flying through the sky on a balloon. Or this one where you're underwater, which is creatively named Ocean World. The underwater swimming physics are pretty janky though, because you don't really get any velocity. It sort of just puts you forward a certain amount when you press the button, and you can get hooked on stuff quite a bit. A lot of the familiar McDonald's characters do show up in the game, so it's nice that it's integrated that well. There's also this really weird bit where Grimace is trapped by like an evil Grimace, and then when you beat the evil Grimace, the real Grimace comes back out. I really don't know what's going on here. I really like how the characters all say thank you when you save them, and then just walk off. There's something just really funny about it. Also, I don't know why, but for some reason there's Chansey in the game. Well before Chansey was actually invented. Overall, this game's a pretty interesting title for the Famicom, and it does have some nice graphics and a bit of catchy music, but I really wouldn't recommend it overall casually, and the main reason is the controls. They just have too much of an impact on the game, and it does make it unplayable at times. But as we'll see down the track, it is worth checking out, mainly due to the interesting speedrun. So the first thing you'll notice about the speedrunning community is it is quite small, and more importantly it's quite old. The world record is 6 years old, and that's actually the newest run on the leaderboards by Suncare. But surprisingly this game actually has been at a GDQ before. So in 2014 Garrison ran Donald Land, and it has a very interesting title of the YouTube video for this run. So it is a fairly well known game, although there's not many runners who have really played it competitively. So the run we're looking at today is Suncare's world record in 12:48. Now you can see from the splits this was a 21-second PB, so it's not like this game is crazily optimized, although it is still pretty impressive to be that consistent given how difficult and slippery the controls can be. You'll notice immediately Suncare jumping off a lot of apples to gain a lot of speed, and you might also notice that the level scrolling is broken. So that's just something weird about this game. If you do move too quickly, the level scrolling is going to break because it can only go so fast. Now, even as Donald gets hooked on the boxes there, the level doesn't continue scrolling any further, because you have to sort of keep moving to keep the level scrolling. So there's a bit of skill here in knowing what's going on with the geometry of the level, even when the scrolling is broken like that. Now, the collision itself actually is doing what it looks like it's doing. So Sungear can scroll it in such a way that they can get around collision that they want to get around. So there's a bit of strategy into how much you let the screen scroll in front of you, but it can be a bit messy to play with because obviously you can't be that consistent with how quickly you're moving, so you have to sort of play it by feel as it comes up. One of the more technical parts of the run is the boss fights, and you'll see here Sungear is going to throw apples onto the boss, but try and hit the boss as soon as possible so that it blows up. There was a couple missed apples there, but overall it was pretty quick. Now, while most levels are broken, the creatively named Skyworld isn't that broken at all. Because you can't actually ride the apples while in the air, you can't gain a whole bunch of speed. So this is probably the most normal looking level in the run. For some reason, I just really like the boss of Skyworld. It looks very intimidating, but all you have to do is sort of get on top of it and drop a bunch of apples. You hit it just a few times and then it's done. Now, where the run gets really interesting is the end of this harbour stage. So you're going to see Sungear stand on that very particular ocean tile and have a close look at the start of the next level when it comes up. So you'll see Donald load into the room and then quickly load out. In and out. There we go. Now, what's actually happened is that entire first room of the level has been completely skipped. Now, I'll get into more details about how exactly this works, but all you'll need to know for now is if you stand on that particular tile at the end of the harbour level, you will skip the first room of the lake level. Now, this isn't the only room skip in the run. You'll find that Sungear is going to stand on the very edge tile here and skip the first room of Castle World. There we go. Now that's a bit of a smaller skip, it sort of puts you in a weird spot of the level, but it does save quite a bit of time. So what's actually happening here with these room skips comes down to the tile that Donald is standing on. So each tile will have a number associated with it, and that's just like the number of the tile index into the level. So if he's standing on, let's say, tile number 40, then when it comes into Castle World, it doesn't clear that off right away, so Donald is still standing on tile number 40, for example. And certain tiles in this game are used to warp you to different rooms, so the door in this level is tile number 40. So it's a little bit weird, but by standing on an innocuous tile, number 40 in the previous level, then when you come into the next level, tile number 40 corresponds to a door tile, and as soon as you're in that level, it thinks that you are in a door passing through it. And that's the exact same thing that happened back here with the lake world. Standing on this little ocean tile here, that number corresponds to the warpy door tile in the next level ocean world. I don't know why the game doesn't clear off what tile you were standing on over the room transition, but for some reason it doesn't. So for about a frame when you come into that level, you're standing on that warp tile, you go straight to the next room of the level. Now, runners obviously looked for a whole bunch of these room skips. They are pretty limited because they only work in levels that have multiple rooms in them. So any one room levels are out of the question because there are no warp tiles. And they sort of looked at all the levels and those were the only two they could find, that castle level and this lake level before. And that just all comes down to, in the levels before, you have to have the right tiles in the boss arena. And since there's only a certain number of tiles in the boss arena, just sometimes it doesn't work out. So that's going to be pretty much all I'll say about the speedrun. It's a fun little platformer with lots of fast movement, breaks the screen scrolling, and you have those cool level warps to skip rooms of individual levels. It's a pretty fun run to pick up, but quite honestly, the slippery controls make it a difficult game. It's actually much better as a TAS game because you can take this speed boosting and bring it to an extreme, as we'll see next. So now let's move on to talking about the TAS of this game. There is a TAS of this game. It's in 8 minutes and 36 seconds, which is as to be expected. And given that it's a pretty obscure game, you'd expect it to be a pretty obscure TASer. So let's have a look at the author. Oh, geez, there's a lot of authors on this TAS. So that many people worked on it, and it's an absolutely huge project with hundreds of thousands re-records. So how did it happen that this many people worked on it? So to understand that, we need to talk about something called the Dream Team Contest, and in particular the Dream Team Contest number 7. So this was a contest and it involves tazzing. Basically what you do is you sign up as a 3 to 4 person team of 3 to 4 tazzers and you all try and tazz a game. So you don't find out what the game is until the contest starts, and then you have a few months to put together a tazz of it, and your team puts together the best tazz they can. And then at the end of it all, whatever team has the best tazz, the fastest tazz, sort of wins. But in reality what happens is some teams are faster at some levels, other teams are faster at other levels. So that's how we got so many co-authors on this. So the reason all these names are on here is because all these people were on the teams that contributed towards levels in the tazz, and it was sort of stitched together to make the best run possible. So this particular Dream Team contest was actually a lot of fun because we had a lot of buy-in from 5 different teams. I was on Team 7, appropriately named Emoji Duck, and Team 4 absolutely smashed the competition. So the final input file was mostly Team 4 stuff, but a bit of our stuff snuck in there with Team number 7. One of the coolest things is this little horse race encode that Noxa put together, and it's all the teams going against each other. So you can see with tazzing that little bits put you forward or back compared to other teams, but you can see pretty quickly that Team 4 just absolutely smashes it. Team 7, which was my team, is kind of keeping up there, but we did fall well and truly behind. You can immediately see from this run some crazy apple boosting, and it's a lot more advanced than what RTA is able to do. You can also see some different strategies, like Team 4 taking the downwards path coming up, and then Team 7 taking the upwards path. And with that downwards path, you can sort of get a little bit more speed out compared to what you can otherwise. Before the rest of this video, we're just going to focus on the tazz that was the combination of all the best bits from all the teams, and that was the tazz that was published, which was 836.133. by a lot of different people. So you can see immediately with the tazz, as I said before, the apple boosting is turned up to 11. You can do so much boosting just all over the place, and more importantly, you can chain multiple apple boosts together. It's really difficult to do because if you throw the apple too fast, it'll sort of escape you before you can catch it and land on it. So it's very delicate and so finicky to get right. You can retain a lot of speed while moving up in your jump, but you lose that speed as soon as you start falling down. Now this game's kind of weird because you normally hold the jump button to jump higher in a game, but if you press it, then let go, then press it again, you still sort of get a little bit more jump. So you're trying to get that jump height without going super high, because if you reach the top of the screen, well, you've sort of got to ride an apple down, which is a bit slower. So you're trying to gain height to gain speed, but then not gain too much height, otherwise you'll go off the top of the screen. It's an extremely delicate balance. One unfortunate thing about the tazz is the screen scrolling. Occasionally you outrun the screen so much that you actually have to stop and wait for it. The reason for this comes down to that same reason about the warping that I mentioned earlier. To warp to the next screen in a level, you need to hit a very particular tile on the level, and you need to wait till the screen scrolls to that tile, otherwise that tile sort of isn't available for you to step on and warp across. So you'll see the tazz a lot of the time actually slow down like this and then wait for the screen to catch up before moving forward. Now in the tazz, we're still going to see those room skip wrong warp kind of glitches. So this one, for example, coming off the harbour level, if you stand on that roof tile, you're going to skip the first little room at the ocean level. You'll notice that's a different tile to what the RTA run used. The reason is the screen hadn't scrolled up to that RTA viable tile yet, but given that there are multiple warp tiles, you can actually have multiple different tiles that work to get this glitch off. Similarly, we have that warp just into that very last level, the castle level, and that's by standing on the same tile as RTA. You stand on this little brick tile and it will skip that first screen of the castle world and sort of warp you to a weird spot inside the castle here. But one thing you might be wondering is, well, if 4 of the teams were so close with times in the 9-minute range, how did Team 4 save another 40 or 50 seconds over all the other 4 teams? And they actually found another warp. So the warp's in this sky level and it's actually a little bit unexpected. There's normally not a lot you can do to break this level, and that's because you're on the balloon, so you can't break the screen scrolling at all. And there's no tiles in the boss arena that will work to warp into the next level. So what is this team going to do? Well, we run into the answer when they get to the inside section of this level. They're going to clip into the roof here, and then wiggle back and forth to sort of scroll the screen to the right. And that is just enough to break the scrolling. Now the boss is going to load and they're going to beat the boss as per normal. And then they're going to stand on one of these wool floor tiles here. It's actually the top of that window. Now that window would not normally be in the boss arena, but now that they've broken the scrolling, it is in the boss arena. And guess what? The window corresponds to a warp tile in the next level. It's absolutely insane that they could break the scrolling even without using that apple glitch. But you go into Oasis World and skip right to the boss, because most of Oasis World is just a left to right side scroller, and then you go into the door that leads to the boss, and there you go, you're in the boss, skip the whole level and save 40 or 50 seconds overall. So that's pretty much all I'm really going to say about this Taz. It was really insane how Team 4 found that other skip, and it really goes to show that when you have that many people looking at the game, you can find some crazy stuff that you wouldn't have thought was possible. If you're thinking about getting into Tazzing, I would really recommend trying out the Dream Team contests. They usually pick different sorts of games on different sorts of consoles. I've been in two myself and it's been a lot of fun. It's a good way to just learn how to start Tazzing, or it's a good way if you're experienced at Tazzing to have a bit of fun competing against others. And you're always on a team of 3 to 4 people, so it's good in that you can balance out each other's skills and weaknesses. It's a really fun way to get into it, and I'd definitely give it a go. But if you're interested in this game, I'd encourage you to give it a go watching the whole Taz, or maybe try some RTA yourself, or even pick it up casually. It's a bit of a weird game with a lot of getting used to, but it's got some funky mechanics which are lots of fun to play with. That's going to be all from me for this video, and thanks so much for watching.